Perfect. Well, thank you guys. Again, appreciate everybody's time here. So what we wanted to do is kind of talk at a high level, right, of what they're seeing, what people are seeing in the marketplace today. Drill down a little bit more into tactically what we can ultimately be doing, and then move from there. What's the future, right? And so whether that's 12 months out, 3 years out, what have you. So with that, from a high level, like what are some best practices that you guys are seeing in how to engage the inbox today? There were 3 kind of big hot buttons, right? We did a little Q&A beforehand. There were 3 big hot buttons that came out in our dialogue prepping for this. And it was customization, personalization, and analytics. So we'll work the other way. So Elizabeth, you want to go first?
Sure. So we're seeing a lot of clients really try to get that one-to-one personalization as accurate as possible. We're also seeing a lot of clients start to really dig into their analytics. I think what tends to happen is you have a lot of data and then you don't always know how to use it, and really figuring out what your business goals are and what data you have and kind of using that to drive your campaigns is really important.
Personalization and customization are very important. Me and my company preach a human-centric approach, so it's all about understanding who you're talking to as humans, what their wants are, what their needs are, and trying to do so on minimal information. So rather than asking for a ton of information on a form through persona data, you can typically infer what's important to these people, what their challenges are, and try to send them email that's important to them and relevant to them based on who they are, what their challenges are, and what their needs are.
I think piggybacking off of what Ronnie just said, the days of batch and blast are really dead. And believe it or not, there are still a lot of companies and people who still do that because that's kind of where they are and what they're working with. But we've really seen a shift in, say, the last 5 years away from that. You can even look at companies like 5 years ago, everyone sent a newsletter, and they sent the same newsletter to every single person in their database. You don't really see that so much anymore because of the advent of marketing automation. People now do custom, nurturing tracks to their prospects instead of just sending out one message to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And the message of that content is really important to know too, in terms of what's my strategy, what's my goal for actually sending a message, right? So a lot of messaging that we send now is trigger-based messaging. So we're listening for all the different places that somebody could connect with us, whether it's on social or mobile or our website. So knowing what the strategy is for sending that person a message. I run into a lot of emails that are just so conversion based, where it's just click, 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 buy or we're discounting this huge thing. They're just trying to really force something upon you. And if you're not in the mood to make that conversion, then you don't have a really good feeling walking away from that message. You just kind of don't care about it, or it's annoying. So definitely different content too. You can send fun content. You can just get some brand awareness or some brand love for a really cool Instagram picture that you took. So I receive a lot of stuff from my glasses provider, which is Warby Parker, which is just like, hey, this is all these different pictures that people are taking from their Instagram, and it's just something that I can scroll down, see some cool stuff, and then that's it. I just get some brand awareness there.
Perfect. Straw poll for everybody. Do you guys have too much data or not enough data? All right, too much data.
No.
Raise your hands.
In our inbox?
No. As a marketer, everybody's got that. So not enough data. All right, so there's 85 people that have just the right amount of data.
Not enough of the right data.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I bring that up just because, right, so you mentioned the massive data, you brought up the fact that there's a lack of data. So just understanding kind of where you guys are at and saying, okay, how can we solve it for one for the other? So there are a couple things that came up there, right? So data, the aggregation of it, how to compile it, how to analyze it. And then to your point, right, what are those content tools that keep people engaged, keep them loyal, talk about the brand, and then ultimately convert or take whatever action that you want. From a content standpoint, I guess I'll start at the end of the train, is what are the content practices that you guys are using and your customers are using today that are really resonating, that you're seeing action be taken? Justin, fire away, or anybody can go, and we don't have to do it. Go ahead.
So for us, it's treating people as humans from a content perspective. So like Justin mentioned, I mean, nobody likes getting those sales emails, right? Where people are just saying buy, buy, buy. It's all about teaching or talking to people as if they're humans. So for example, in our blog subscription email, right now, if you subscribe to DT's blog, then you get an email that says, it's titled, Did We Just Become Best Friends? You open it up and it's that gif from Step Brothers. So who's seen that movie? So there's just a funny scene where they say, did we just become best friends? Hell yeah, high five, and just keep going. So that really shows our personality and our brand, and we get an awesome engagement with that email. We even, just yesterday, someone took a screenshot of that part of the email and put it on their Twitter, said, oh my God, we're BFFs, I love this. And that was actually done in Norwegian, I had to translate it. So people really like being treated like humans across the globe. And I think that's something that works really well for us, not only in our email, but also in our blog. A lot of times people use their blog to say, hey, we're the best at this, and here's our best practice, and this is how you do it, and best, best, best. Whereas with our blog, we take the approach of, hey, here's where we screwed up, and here's what we learned from it. And that resonates with people really well. So as far as content, I think that's something that's important to keep in mind. And my general rule is, if I'm not having fun writing it, people aren't going to have fun reading it. So that's something that I like to keep in mind whenever I'm composing either a blog post or an email.
Well, I think the number one rule of content, especially when it comes to email, is nobody cares about you. Nobody woke up at 6 a.m. in the morning going, gosh, I wish that such and such a company would send me some spam today. So your email shouldn't be about you. It should be about your user, what your user wants, what your user needs. And the more specific you can be, the better your email will perform. Now, when you start getting into that level of specificity, that's where data comes in. And I think that the problem that most marketers have, speaking for myself, it's not that we have too much data or too little data, it's that we as marketers aren't trained in data. So we're trying to learn how to deal with data when what we really know how to do is messaging and creative and content. So I think that data is a new skill for us to learn. And segmentation and personalization really does depend on data and giving the right message to the right people.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's some good ways to learn more about that by kind of training yourself as a marketer. So use social to sort of see like what people were interested in. It's a lot quicker to put out a social post, like a picture on Instagram, and just see what kind of feedback you get from taps or comments or whatever, or somebody sharing your Facebook post or things like that. That can tell you what kind of content people are interested in the first place. So like Warby Parker's a good example. For me, I only buy maybe glasses once every couple years. It's a lot more affordable now, so you can buy them, once every year at like $100. But I'm not buying it like every week or every month. So if you keep on spamming me with buying my glasses, I'm just not going to like your company after a little while. I'm going to look for somebody else. But so like they sent me an email on Halloween from pictures off their Instagram of like, hey, here's all the costumes where people wear glasses, like our glasses or whatever. So it's like Harry Potter, and then they have like Harry Potter style glasses, and then I don't know, Ghostbusters guy, like all this stuff, which is just content that's already out there that they got a great response from on Instagram. They now put that into their email. Maybe I missed those posts on Instagram, so now I'm getting it in my email. It's still fun. I still get to like view it. I'm gonna keep scrolling because I'm just curious about what else is there. So it's great engagement, right? So you can train yourself on what kind of content is actually gonna resonate.
I was also going to add on to, I think you may have said something that triggered this, but I think your customers today are expecting you to be even smarter about what you're sending them. They have much higher expectations than I think we've ever seen before. So, for you, if you're only purchasing glasses once a year, you need to find something to send to that person throughout the year to make sure that when they are doing their once a year purchase, that they're still thinking of you. But I think that's where it comes down to, you probably already have the content. It's a matter of just using it accurately and really giving the customer exactly what they're looking for.
it reminds me, so Justin and I used to work together at IBM, and we used to talk about a stat where it was, the percentage of C-level and marketing execs that felt like they were delivering a personal experience was like 80%, whereas like if you ask consumers, it was like 20%, right? It was just this massive gap. And part of that goes that learning capacity, right? So like, tactically, and some of you guys, we're all in different backgrounds, but tactically, how do you get better? How do you learn better, right? So both as an individual, right, there might be some tools there. And then from an enterprise, from an organizational standpoint, what are the tactical tools, tricks, partners, vendors, what have you, that are really kind of making that path to smarts a little bit smoother and a little bit faster? That makes sense. There's like 12 questions packed in one.
Well, I think the obvious thing is, if you use an email marketing software, you get data on every single email you send. Believe it or not, a lot of marketers don't look at their data, and a lot of companies don't look holistically at all of their campaigns and that campaign performance. So you don't have to learn anything different or do anything different to just look at the data that's sitting there that's telling you what your email is doing. There's also a report that's pretty well known. It's put out by Silverpop, which is now an IBM company. But every year they do a report. It's an annual email benchmarking report. And it basically shows you like opens, clicks, unsubscribes, all of those metrics by industry. So it's a great way to compare what you're doing against a benchmark so that you can understand if your emails are underperforming or overperforming.
You can also have, depending on your marketing automation system and its capabilities, yes, it is very important to look at the data and synthesize the data and understand what's working, what's not working. A/B testing is extremely important. That's how we know that this kind of fun approach that we take is working. But you can also modify what emails get sent based on click behavior. So for example, we have a number of reading lists in our emails, and we market to startups, we market to enterprise, we market to people in product positions and marketing positions. And so based on their click behavior and their website visits, you can have the system do all the work for you. So if they're clicking through X amount of emails that are targeted towards marketing, then you put them down a marketing track. And that way, rather than asking 12 questions on a form, which people don't like filling, you can figure out based on the information that you already have based on behavior, what they're interested in, what their challenges likely are, and who they likely are, and then send them relevant information that way.
So this morning I woke up and I got my first 20% off holiday email. So we're ready for this. So as we're headed into this, and some of you guys may have already this planned, what's different about this year for email marketers as they head into the holiday season?
I think every year starts earlier and earlier, so that's probably the first thing. I think this year, back to that whole really knowing your customer and being, they expect you to be very smart about them. We're seeing a lot of, weather-related, really targeting people based on where they're geographically located. I actually got a very smart email. It was for a cosmetics company it's a small business, but they basically, I was in New York when I got the email, and it said, come shop at our local stores, and it populated the local stores, which were all within a mile of where I was. I went back to LA 2 days later, and I opened the same email, and they now are populating in the exact same email the locations close to me in Los Angeles. So I think that the geographic is really what I'm starting to see a lot more of, and I think people do appreciate that, because you really you're speaking to them on a very local level.
I think one thing it's not different this year, it's been trending this way for a while, but people hate marketers and people hate marketing email. In a recent study that HubSpot put out, they discovered that marketers were less loved than lawyers and stockbrokers. So people do not like being marketed to. So people want you to be able to give them something of value, like the geographic location, here are the stores. People don't have patience. So they want you to give them something rather than sell, sell, sell. So, you know, if you're getting 20% off, then you're getting value out of that rather than, hey, come to our store with no information.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, marketers are fortunate year after year that more people are trying to avoid going to the store and preferring to just order things at home, right? So whether it's through Amazon or whatever, it's just the convenience factor is really big there. So you're just going to see more and more volume, you know, coming your way or at least being made available. You know, understanding people's, like if we're speaking about like holiday shopping in general, like let's just take that example. Understanding people's buying habits are still very important. So yes, there will be people who are doing very last minute, down to the wire, you know, shopping and things like that. So keeping that communication and keeping like in front of people is important. But also you don't want to do that in like a very pushy way, right? That, you know, makes your brand seem, you know, desperate or something along those lines. You want to make it fun as well. So I think you can take advantage of that and also like listening for what people are doing elsewhere, right? So typically the buying process is I see it and then I like research it and then I look at, you know, comparisons and then I, you know, look at shipping and I make all these different factors before I actually buy something. So listening to what people are doing, they're going onto your website, they're reading reviews, they're doing all these different activities. Knowing that that's going on is really important. So like listening for those different events and messaging appropriately off of that is a good place to start going.
And one thing that you kind of hinted at, but we haven't really addressed too much, is just engaging the inbox mobile device, right? So all of us would agree that's mandatory at this stage, but is there anything specific, kind of new, or that we really need to be thinking about?
We actually have started to tell clients today that you should be coding your email and developing your email for the mobile device first, and then for the desktop, because most people today are on their mobile device constantly, and that's how they're being connected. I know that the topic is email, but I also think it's important to know if you have an app or an SMS program, and you are seeing that your customers are no longer engaging with your email, but they are engaging through push notifications or SMS messages, that's where you should be spending your marketing dollars to target them. And I think especially during the holiday when inboxes get so flooded with marketing emails, if you know someone is an app purchaser, it's better to almost, I don't want to say bombard them with push notifications, but send them the message in a push notification versus an email if that's where you're most likely to get a purchase from them.
Yeah, I currently work in the mobile space. And, you know, I think that push notifications are going to be the new email inbox. And, you know, piggybacking on location, it's like mobile is marketing intelligence times 10, because you can literally know where someone is at every single moment of every single day, and there's things you can do in terms of geofencing to send people push notifications when they walk into the building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it can be very big brotherish and very scary, but that's really where the world is going to be going. But the flip side of that is if you abuse those privileges, you will get shut off really, really, really quick. And because the internet service providers and phone companies, they learned from the spam debacle, so they're a lot stricter when it comes to bombarding people on their phones. And if you abuse that privilege, you will lose that privilege very quickly.
Yeah, I would be really careful with push notifications, specifically SMS notifications. Just because we have the access to people doesn't necessarily mean that we should abuse it. So back in the day, people hated door-to-door salesmen. Push notifications are kind of the same thing. You're interrupting someone's day, so you want to be really, really careful. Specifically with SMS, again, it's intrusive, and you can get a false positive. So for example, on email, you'll see that your click rate will go up, but that counts unsubscribes. So that could be the same for push notifications. People could be clicking on it and clicking through to turn off those notifications. So who here uses Lyft? Anyone? Yeah, everyone. So who here gets a push notification from the app and a text message? because that drives me absolutely crazy.
Uber does
It's-
it too, it drives me insane.
Yeah, it's so redundant, you can't turn it off. Same with Amazon. Who has the Amazon app? Who gets a push notification from the app and a text message? So you have to be really, really careful with that. Make sure that you're using common sense and don't always trust the data because they could just be clicking through in order to unsubscribe.
I think if people are opted in for SMS and push, you may want to question if they're really opted in for both. I know on some places I'm opted in for both, but I'm only getting one or the other. So I'm assuming it's the channel that I'm purchasing or more engaged with. But everything, in-app messaging is not opt-in. Well, you do have to opt in, but SMS, they have to give their phone number. You can't just take phone numbers that you have from point of sale and send them SMS messages.
Yeah, if you Google on WikiHow, Amazon, how to turn off text notifications, it takes you through the steps. Step 1, go to your account. Step 2, go to phone number. Step 3, delete your phone number because they don't have an option to opt out. So that's the only way. So again, yes, make sure that people are actively opting in.
You had a question up
Yeah,
here.
I was really curious. It's very helpful. Can you guys like kind of differentiate between like personalization and customization? And also, I've never heard of push notifications. How do they show up exactly? Like, what are they?
Like an app push, like for your phone, so you get like a SMS message, it'll pop up on your phone, or if like Amazon says your shipment is delivered, it's right on your home screen.
That's a push notification.
That's a push notification.
You would usually get the opt-in when you first download the app.
Yeah.
Then you should be able to see, and you can say you don't want push notifications if you don't want from that company.
Yeah, I think iOS still does, or iOS definitely does that when you download. I think Android, you might need to go to settings, so that's why a lot of marketers are happier when it's Android, just because that way they know they'll get at least some push notifications out there before you figure out how to turn it off. So.
What about personalization and customization?
Yes, a good question. Yeah, what's the difference between, in your eyes, personalization and customization?
I think the two terms are often used synonymously. I think personalization typically means, putting "Hey Charlie" in the subject line, or "Hey," putting data specific to the account record, whatever, in. That's kind of the technical definition for personalization. But providing a customized experience is really broader than that. It's like, don't send him pantyhose, he's a dude.
Yeah, I was gonna say, not mutually exclusive.
That's true. I watch RuPaul's Drag Race, definitely not exclusive.
Thank you.
Real bad.
Anything to add there? Like, I'm done. Good. So one of the questions, as we kind of move forward, like what steps do people need to be doing today to make sure that their email program is where it needs to be, 12 months, 24 months out from now?
So you got to think about the future. So again, this comes down to personas, and I'm also going to kind of lobby back into customization. But so again, yes, personalization is hello, your name, how is your company in parentheses doing? But customization is really creating an experience that resonates with your customers, so knowing what they care about. And this is going to go beyond email as well. So for example, right now we're using HubSpot. So you can use custom modules, which means that if a person is at a startup, then they're going to get this type of email. Or if a person's been reacting well and likes your funny, more personal emails, then they're going to get a more personal one. So you can do that within emails on certain systems that a different copy and sometimes different design will show up, and you can do that on landing pages as well, and with calls to action. And so I think the future is going to be having a website that actually changes based on who your audience is and what their needs are and what their preferences are. So, for example, with DT, we have the startups, which have a ton of personality. They like to move really quickly, and then we have enterprise software, which typically likes a more professional page, likes to move a bit more slowly. So I would want to have two versions of the website with completely different designs, completely different content, cater to what those people want to see and what they're used to seeing, because having a big personality is a huge turn on to some and a huge turn off to some. So it's understanding your customer, and once that technology becomes available, which hopefully soon, this is just my prediction.
Yeah, it actually is available.
On more than landing pages though, because typically it's just landing pages. not the entire experience.
Well, it depends. I mean, HubSpot has a whole module that you have to pay extra for, but they have a whole module that'll kind of let you do that on your whole site. So I think it just depends on what you're using to build your site.
That's true, but not the entire experience. So right now we do a lot of experience mapping, and that's your site, it's also your emails, it's your social, it's your in-store if you have a store. So making sure that you can customize those different experiences more than just landing pages.
Yeah, I was gonna say pretty much the same thing, but I also think that real-time personalization is sort of the way of the future, especially in email. And if you think about the geo-targeting, that's very similar, but also knowing that someone has walked into your store and purchased this particular product, maybe don't send them an email 3 hours later just because that's the time your emails are going out, but really make sure that you are collecting the data on your customer and knowing who your customer is, what they're interested in before you send any notification to them.
And I'll kind of give the small business startup perspective. If you're like me, you're doing 50 billion things. You don't have a big team. You don't have, the time or the energy or the resources to be as strategic as you want to be. So I think that the answer, if you're starting small, is start where you find yourself. So there's small good things that you can do right away. The basic thing to do is don't send people things they don't want. And if you're not sure they want it, err on the side of don't sending. Now that can be hard when you have business people who don't understand the concept of protecting your list or whatever. But you have to be the champion for your customers and put yourself in their shoes and draw some lines in the sand where you can. But I think start where you find yourself and map things out slowly. You don't have to go straight from nothing to real-time email personalization. So I think the most important thing is map out who you're talking to, map out what they care about, and try to give them content that matters.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Matt, you asked like more of a broader view as well, like even like 5 years out. So I like to think maybe a little bit more long term, and I also like to think how people are being trained right now as well. So take like a 16-year-old kid who is being trained on Snapchat, and that's what they understand that the internet is, and that's what they expect on their mobile. Well, 5 years from now, he's going to be 21, 22 years old, and maybe comes into your demographic in terms of, a potential buyer or somebody interested in your brand. Maybe they're in school or have a job or whatever. They have disposable income now to buy something. They're being trained on a platform that is all video, it's highly interactive and things like that. So when I look at email, one of the questions that I get most often is, do you support, animated GIFs? Do you support video in your email? Do you support these things, right? Because they're trying to push that training over into a platform that's not quite there yet. But I'm hoping that, with faster phone processors and things like that, we can support a lot more with email than we can right now, like that we do with apps. So I think just like looking out, 5 years from now, okay, a video is our new mode of communication. You're even seeing, past like the election cycle, it's going to go back to just reading headlines, and then I don't really care about the article, right? So you see a lot of clickbait and stuff like that going on. But just like understanding those little areas of how the younger people are being trained right now to expect, messaging from marketers in the future. So just thinking like, a lot of like long term, I think that would be really interesting for mobile, is to see what people can do with email design and content, and try to pick up off of what social's doing now.
Very cool. Question, I was just going to open up for questions.
Great. So on since Gmail, for example, they categorize on desktop, but emails. So on the topic of content, how does the content inside the email determine where it would be, what section will be categorized in, and how can you
I hate this question.
shift your emails to get
No good answer for Gmail.
Yeah, oftentimes they'll see who it's from. So if you do from sales@yourbrand.com, then it'll more likely go into the promotions tab. If you make it from a certain person, so for example, for our sales emails, it'll be an automated email, but I'll have it come from our sales guy, John. So it'll say email is from John Lawley. The email is john@digitaltelepathy.com. So that's one way to help it, but in general, it's really hard to game the system. So I think a lot of marketers, and hopefully not too many, but they concentrate more on how to game the system rather than producing really good content. At the end of the day, if you're producing really awesome stuff and people love your emails, they'll go to that folder, look for the emails, open them, and put them into their tab. So that's really how you win the game. Because the second that you learn how to game the system, they're going to find a way to bar that as well. So rather than focusing on gaming the system, just create awesome stuff.
So Gmail, as you were saying, is the most challenging. I know when they launched their promotions folder, I think it was a year and a half ago, everyone was very nervous, what happens to my marketing emails? And it really didn't make that big a difference in terms of open and engagement rates. The one thing to know about Gmail is they consider engagement to be open, click, and how much time someone spends within the email. So if people are just mailing to those who've opened in the past 3 months, you may not get as big a success as if you mail to people who have opened and clicked within the past 3 to 6 months. You'll have to figure out for your specific brand how to, get back into the inbox if you're having problems, but I don't think the promotions folder has really made any negative impact for marketers.
I have an odd question. I just took over business development for a small startup, and we have a product. And I'm a big networker, and I work in nonprofit and consultant, and I have probably 7,000 people on my email list. They're all in Gmail. I want to convert some of those people over to the business end of it. But I don't want to just spam everybody in and say, go here. I'm just wondering if there's a tried and true practice any of you have had in that arena so that I can do this in a really smart way.
I can say there's a book, oh my goodness, it was written by Salesforce. I can't think of the name of it. If anyone in the room knows what I'm talking about, but it was basically the book that kind of created the whole SDR email movement, where you send an email asking who was the right person for me to contact. Does anybody know what book I'm talking about? I can't think of the name.
Is it predictable revenue?
That's it, thank you. Predictable revenue.
Thank you.
So predictable revenue is kind of a model for kind of biz devs and SDRs that kind of maps out sending an email going, hey, I'm looking for the right person who handles blah, blah, blah. Now the flip side of that is that it's become so successful that everyone's doing it. So I get literally 5 to 10 SDR emails a day, and I delete all of them without reading them. So I think that the real key goes back to content, because what you should do is, instead of blasting your whole list, sit down and think about who the people are that you really need to reach. Take the time to individually research those people and send them a real personal note.
I'm actually calling people, and it's because people move companies and that, so it's been so time consuming. But it's worth it. I mean,
Yeah, you can do the predictable revenue hunt and fish thing, but just know that your response rates are going to be really low, like 0.1% or less, who will actually take the time to respond.
And people are always really interested in what I'm doing because I'm always gathering volunteers and good causes.
So if that's the case, maybe blogging would be a good approach for you. So you can email the whole list rather than saying, hey, respond to me to buy X. You can say, hey, I just wrote this blog post, thought you'd be interested, check it out, and urge them to subscribe. That way they're opting in rather than putting them into a system and blasting them with emails that they may not be interested in.
And I don't want to, I just don't want to be spam. I don't want to be considered spam.
Well, if you're producing content that's interesting, like if you're a nonprofit and you're wanting to reach people in that space, then send emails that are about the nonprofit world that they would find valuable versus, hey, I'd really love to talk to you.
Yeah, well, that's usually what I do, but this is not. This is a for-profit company. And we will change the world.
You have another question?
How important is the subject line, and what are some good techniques for really working that subject line so people want to open that you guys have found?
So believe it or not, the most important thing that gets people to open is not the subject line, it's the from line, and it's common sense. If my mom emails me, I'm gonna open it, or depending on my relationship, whatever. But I mean, if your boss emails you, so who is emailing you is really the best predictor of open. So for example, I worked at a large utility. When we sent marketing emails and they were bad emails, we always got open because people knew we were their electric company. So name recognition is really the most important factor in getting people to open. Now, barring that, your subject line is the most important thing. Now, there's a million blog posts about subject lines. There's a million different rules of thumb. Kind of the traditional rule of thumb is 50 characters or less. There are some, studies that say, no, you can do 75. It's really targeted, but, in general, keep it short. Personalization does work. But I can tell you, as someone who's now getting spammed, like I said, with 10 emails per day, I am so over the cuteness. Like when people send me stuff that's trying to be cute, I know it's a sales email because I don't know who you are and you're emailing me. So sometimes just being direct is better than trying to be clever.
And also make sure you're testing it not only on your desktop, right? We all work at our desktop. Is send it to yourself, see what it looks like on your iPhone, on your Android phone, right? Because the subject lines are going to appear differently. So just do some testing there.
What about question marks instead of subject lines?
Those work.
Yeah, it all depends. I mean, again, you're going to want to use the human-centric approach. So think, what would engage you as a person? What would make you want to open? So I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the brand Chubbies or subscribes to their emails, but their emails are so funny. Their subject line, one time the subject line was Donkey Kong, the from was Donkey Kong, and the subject line was, I'm going to break some boxes, and you click it open, and there's a gif of them dressed as Donkey Kong breaking boxes. Has nothing to do with shorts, which is their company, but it's fun and it's engaging, and we're so sick of being sold to, and I think that today's consumers sense authenticity from a mile away. So if you're trying to be disingenuous and you're just not resonating with a person, it's something that's kind of trying to conceal a sales email, people are going to see through that, they're not going to like it. But if you let your human side shine through, that's something that's going to connect.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's something I would say is another sort of training as well. So as you scroll down your Facebook feed and it's just flooded with different articles that people are sharing, and you see the ones, and the ones that are just like clickbait or whatever, where it's like, or you get those websites where you have to click for each image. It takes like 30 clicks to go through a gallery. Like nothing is more annoying than that, and I will never, ever, ever go back. I'll just know and I'll just block it or whatever. So you don't want to get blocked as well. So that's why you're saying you have to offer some value, right? And as people start to recognize your emails with being valuable in some sense, you're going to get a lot of cred there, and I think that's going to carry you for quite a while. So I think that's important as well. It's like you can be really entertaining with your subject lines to get that first initial open or whatever it is. But if you offer no value below an interesting subject line, no one's going to be interested in going back to that. And this is again training from social.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, just a quick kind of trick, but this is one you have to test, is putting special characters in your subject line can work, but they can also be perceived as spammy, so it's something that you have to test for your particular audience.
Like an emoji, for example? Or?
Yeah.
What do you say?
Like an emoji.
Also, back to clickbait, that's another thing that today's consumer is super sensitive to. So rather than making your subject line, see what's cool that we did here, or see how we raised our revenue, do something, say a part of what's in there. So, we found that subject lines with emojis are spam, see why. So something that gives them a taste so they can get something from the headline, but then they can click in to learn more.
I was going to say something interesting, not so much a question, but kind of to your point, I never realized when you said the who it's from line is, what really gets you in. Until you said that somebody didn't click with me, there's a band I love that I get their emails. And when it's from the band, I know it's something like, you know, they have a show, or no, probably merchandise or something like that. But every so often you get one from the lead singer. It's not really him, he's not sitting there writing it, but you feel like, wow, the singer's sending a personal message and you want to open it and you want to see what he says. I never really thought of that difference, but it's true, because when it just comes from the, you know, band at, I know, okay, it's a merch sale or something.
Yeah.
But the ones where it's, I see his name in the, you know, from line, it's more personal.
Yeah, and we do that, and also be careful not to abuse that, so I don't want everyone going back and making every single email be from their CEO. It's something that I use sparingly, so our blog has a really great following. We get about 1,000 blog subscribers every month, and so all of our blog emails or content emails say from Digital Telepathy. But then if there's something big, like we're announcing a new service or we're announcing a new direction or something exciting, those very rare emails, I'll make them from our CEO check.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't overuse it or else no one's gonna open your emails anymore.
You should just think of your from as the branding of your company, and I think, you know, hopefully then you're not abusing someone's first name.
So if imitation, right, is the best form of flattery, what, besides Warby Parker, because we know that you're a Warby fanboy, is
It'd be a good email.
maybe give an example or two of brands that you work with, work for, or follow, that people can sign up for those newsletters and just say, okay, these are people that are doing it right or doing it well. So, examples. What was the drugstore company that used the geo-tracking?
Blue Mercury. I actually do think, I mean, they're not someone I work with, but I do think that they do a very good job of the geo-tracking.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Do you know any idea what technology was there?
I don't know specifically who they use, but there are companies such as Movable Ink or Live Clicker that's their core business. I assume there are others as well.
Okay. Do you guys have any examples that you like to follow?
You know, I like, I always think that retail is the first one out of the gate with pretty much everything, right? They've got bigger budgets, they've got more resources, they get more eyeballs. So like I like following bigger brands just to see what they're doing, because I just know that they have the capabilities behind them and they're probably gonna test out some things first. They have a lot more technology. So like, if you like Nike as an example, when you buy like a pair of Nike shoes that are customized, they send you these updates. It's like every 3 days or something, there's an update with this like graph of like how your shoe is being made, and like pictures of like with the process and whatever. Just really engaging. That's a transactional email. And that's like a shipping email, right? But they're showing me all this detail in it. I'm just like, oh, that's cool. Like, you know, flipping around and checking it out. And it sounds kind of goofy, but it gets a lot of engagement. Like I get caught, or I catch myself looking at a transactional email for like 30 seconds, zooming in on a picture or something like that. So things like that you can just get really creative with. So yeah, I think, you know, bigger retail brands are a good place to start if you need like inspiration, or you just want to see like what's happening out there. Because again, you're not always going to find like a superstar marketer who's able to do everything in terms of like working for a smaller company where they're wearing a lot of hats and they're able to always put out, you know, amazing content. But bigger brands, bigger resources, and, you know, usually agencies involved there. So you could see some really inspirational content.
I don't have a specific brand to point out, but I wanted to piggyback off of what you said. If you're a B2B marketer, or not even B2B, if you're a company marketing to people, what you should know is that transactional emails perform, I'll make up a number, this is a totally made up number, but 1,000 times better than promotional emails. So transactional emails, you know, your order is shipped, that kind of stuff, people open those. So those are an opportunity for you to slip a little bit of well done marketing into those emails, because more people will look at those emails than your marketing emails.
Yeah, also if you want to market to potentially millennial or younger target audience, then check out Chubby's. Their stuff is so funny. They don't have a huge budget, they're not a huge company, but just the things that they do they really break the mold. So I haven't seen their ad from a name be Chubby's in a very long time. It's always something random, but I always know it's them because it's that weird, silly brand recognition.
I was actually going to say, well, besides Blue Mercury, Nordstrom, I think they do a really good job of knowing their customer and knowing what you've purchased in the past, and they seem to, pass that on to their emails as well.
In lead nurturing emails, what are some of your favorite like trigger points or actions to use in order to determine what email to send next or when to send the next email?
I think that that's, going to be very personal to your company, but part of it is really mapping out, hate to be cliche, but the whole buyer's journey thing. It's important when you're doing lead nurturing to know not only who you're talking to, but what stage in the buying cycle they're talking to. When you talk about trigger points, one of the things Ronnie brought up earlier about like looking at their web page visits or looking at the type of white papers or things that they've downloaded on your site, all of that can kind of be clues to put people into certain tracks and funnels because they give you clues as to what they're interested in. And so a way to think about it is to categorize your content in, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. So for example, if someone's clicking on a pricing guide or a Gartner report, they're pretty far down the buying cycle than someone who's just looking at, 10 ways to blah, blah.
Yeah, I'd also recommend basing it on more than clicks. So for example, we know at DT that when someone goes to our client site, so the work site that we've done previously, then if they go to that work page, we know that they're thinking about us, and that won't always be click through an email. We only have one email in our nurture sequence that leads them to the work page, but usually they'll click through an email and go to a blog post, then go to our work page, and then usually from there they'll contact us about a project. But if they don't, we can base it off of that behavior within HubSpot to then put them into more of a buying nurture cycle. So, we know that you just went to the work site, that's the perfect time to send an email and say, hey, you want to have a conversation? So clicks are important, but website visits are also important. They can navigate to it from somewhere a little more random.
There was one here and then you. Did you have a question?
HubSpot's been mentioned a couple of times, but other than that, what other platforms for email do you guys like?
If you're a small business, cheapo, not up to marketing automation, I personally love MailChimp. I love MailChimp. It's easy to use, it's intuitive, they actually have some automation in there, everything's built for mobile. So if you're young and green, I love MailChimp. In terms of marketing automation, I think probably the big four are HubSpot, Pardot, which is now Salesforce, Eloqua, and Marketo. So Eloqua is more enterprisey, and you can jump in if you, and Silverpop, IBM. Eloqua is more, high-level enterprise. Pardot and HubSpot are more kind of startup, small business. I think Marketo is more in the middle. You guys might disagree.
Yeah, so all of those that were just mentioned, they're good but pretty expensive. So if you want a step above MailChimp, but you still want something that's pretty good, I usually recommend Infusionsoft. So Infusionsoft is a combination CRM system and marketing automation system. It's usually a lower price point. It's made specifically for startups. So that's usually one that I would recommend to my startup clients. So check that out. And I've used ActiveCampaign, that's also a combination CRM marketing automation system. That one's okay, but between the two, I think Infusionsoft is the better bet. And then for larger companies, I always recommend HubSpot.
Sorry, what's the second one you said?
ActiveCampaign. I had some issues with it though, so I would still say Infusionsoft.
It absolutely maps to what your needs are. So you gotta go to the needs and figure out exactly what you want. So there's 300 ESPs out there. There's 5-6 good enterprise ones, and then there's a lot underneath that. So
Yeah, I would say, just to piggyback off of that, there's, I'm not going to recommend any, but there's two different kind of technologies that you need to sort of look at, right? If you're looking at like a broader scope, if you're just looking for email, then that's fine, and you just look for best email provider. But if you're looking for a larger marketing automation, you're going to get two different scenarios during your buying cycle. You're going to get a hub technology, So like an Adobe, HubSpot I'm sure has this, I mean it has it in the name, but like they do a lot of different things, right? They do email, they also do social, they have all these different like components and modules. Some of them are, you know, add-on stuff, some of them come with like a starter sort of, entry-level price or whatever. So you've got hub technologies where they want you to use everything within their marketing stack. So you're using all of their tools, and they will not integrate, for the most part, with a lot of things outside of there because it's not beneficial to them. And then you've got point solutions as well. Point solutions are like, say you bought like Hootsuite or Sprinkler, which are like social listening. They do a very, very specific thing, and they show you on their website all the different places they integrate with, which is typically like, like a marketing automation. So you want to make sure that you're either going with like, a technology stack like say Adobe or IBM or Oracle or something that services your needs, or you're picking, or Microsoft, yeah, or you're picking best of breed, right? Which means you've got probably a little bit of a bigger budget, but you need specific tools to have specific outcomes. And typically the high sort of technologies don't give you everything that like a point solution would. Like if you went out and said, I need the best social listening tool available to understand what my customers are doing there. So you're gonna run into those two scenarios. Typically what happens is you're gonna buy like a hub technology, and then you're gonna try to integrate all of this stuff into it later, and you'll just end up building out a marketing stack over time that just gets better and better, hopefully. So you're gonna run into those situations, and you just have to kind of deal with them or try to figure them out earlier.
Just to add one thing to what everyone has said, I've worked both on the email service provider side and now on the agency side. Doing a migration is very painful. I've seen it, over the years. I think you're going to want to find a platform that you can grow into. So not just what meets your needs today, but really think 6 months, a year, 2 years out, where do you want your program to be, and find a solution that will allow for that kind of growth. But also, if you're working in a lot of different platforms, make sure that you find one that integrates pretty efficiently with whatever platform you're choosing.
Yeah, so dealing with, going back to strategy, I have a situation where I have high-end sophisticated clients that spend a lot more money, but infrequently, and then I have a smaller, high-volume play. The messaging is completely different. It's much simpler on the volume play and much more sophisticated. What's the best way to segment those users so when they come to your site, you're kind of, as best as you can, you're trying to, or even on the social path, you're trying to get them to come to the right campaigns for them.
Are the two completely different product lines, or just?
The same products, but there's different solutions.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Maybe brand them differently so that people can know what they're going to, but just based on behavior, you can usually segment them out. So you could.
This is a service company that has, so that's why it's not a product.
Okay, it's a service. You could still brand the services separately. So service for enterprise and service for personal or whatever it is. And I would recommend trying to capture that information up front since it's so integral to your marketing. But if you can't do that, let's say that you want to try to convert your blog subscribers and all you're asking for is name and email, send an introductory email and capture that click information. So say which best describes you, or here's an article for a big enterprise company, here's an article for personal, and that's a kind of a light touch way to see who's who. And from there, you should automatically separate them out into different campaigns, and you can have them, maybe every now and then say, who are you, so that if they were pulled into the wrong campaign, you can pull them back into the right one.
Oh, so that's set new rules along the way so they can always get.
Yeah, have an escape lever.
How often would you do that? Every email or every so often?
I would do it maybe, depending on how often you email, maybe 1 out of every 10 emails, I think would suffice.
Like quarterly basically?
Yeah,
okay.
just to make sure. You wouldn't have to say it in such obvious terms, but you could just have them go fill a form where they can self-select.
And I don't know if you're able to if you're able to segment, like say by company size, if it's clearly like this size of a company is this kind of company and that size is another, you can go and do like a data append to kind of get that information and then segment that way, like data.com or some of those providers.
Thanks, guys.
Any last question?
When you guys are building an email drip campaign, how many emails do you typically need, do you guys, in your overall waterfall in order to see a conversion? Like, how many touch points?
It really varies on what your product is. I had a client that was a university client. Their product was a genealogy class, and their cycle was 2 years. It took 2 years on average for someone to convert. So for that, I'd have to build a 2-year email sequence. Now that's a huge example and maybe a major one that hopefully doesn't apply to anyone here because it's a huge pain. But just take a look at your buyer cycle, see how long it takes them to convert, and then that's how long those emails should be with nurture emails. So for example, you could have a 30-day cycle to try to push them to a sale, and then just push them into a nurture campaign. So any new blog post can go out or anything like that. But yeah, essentially it depends on what kind of product you have.
Yeah, definitely. I just had that scenario.
2 years?
So there's stuff that does take 2 years, but like I just bought something for my wife, and I knew that, or she had mentioned something about like, oh, I got like a discount off of my first email, right? And they were having a sale anyways. So I signed up for the email to try to get a discount, and they did. They sent me with my welcome email. They sent me, here's 20% off. And I was like, well, of course, I'm gonna use it now. I'm looking at your product. So anyway, so it ended up being a pretty sizable discount. But there you go. Now I'm on their list. I'm a buyer. They know what I bought. I bought 2 items. And now they've got quite a bit to go off of. I'm sure that the margin wasn't great for them, but now they've got an active person on their list who, if they get a good experience, I'm going to open up their emails for a little while longer, right? So stuff like that just works fast.
I would just test.
They don't discount.
I would just recommend testing because you don't know if 10 emails will get someone to purchase or 3. So it's hard to give an exact number.
Yeah, that's absolutely testing. So just depends on who you are, what company you're, what product you're trying to sell. So
Yeah, I also use lead scoring. I have 2 types of lead score. I have qualified and engaged. So we have a lot of leads that are super engaged with our product, but they're never actually going to become clients. So those are people within the design community, freelancers, people that just want to learn from an educational approach, and they're never going to buy. And then we have super qualified people, so they're heads of marketing at enterprise companies or at funded startups. So by having those 2 lead scores, I can see who's qualified and who's just engaged but not qualified. And then once someone hits the mark of both qualified and engaged, that's when I move them into that sequence that tries to lightly push a sale. So it's also about hitting them at the right time.
thank you guys, appreciate it. We're 1 minute over our time. So any other questions, follow up with them. But thank you all, and thank you for the panelists. Give them a round of applause.